Namaste everyone. Welcome to the second part of my presentation on scanning electron microscopy. In the previous session, I explained you about the basics of scanning electron microscopy and electron microscope. I mentioned you about the unique features of scanning electron microscope, how and why it is important and relevant, and also I explained the basic principles governing the functioning of a scanning electron microscope. I also mentioned about various parts and also how they take part in the functioning of the scanning electron microscope. Today we will continue from here. Some more aspects like specimen preparation and also application of scanning electron microscopy will be discussed in the second and last part of the presentation. The title given by me was Application of Scanning Electron Microscopy in the Analysis of Ayurvedic Herbal Formulations. In the last class, we discussed up to the instrumentation part of scanning electron microscope, and today we will start with sample preparation. When you have to introduce a sample to this instrument for analysis, what are the preparations that you have to do? This description mainly holds good for biological specimens. Even in the case of inorganic materials also, some of these steps are followed. Let us see how the sample has to be prepared for the analysis under scanning electron microscopy. There are 7 important steps involved here. It's important for us to know that the size of the sample that is used for analysis should be very appropriate. It should be just enough to fit in the specimen chamber. And the specimen is usually mounted rigidly so that it doesn't move on a specimen holder, which is called as specimen stub. There are different models of scanning electron microscopes. Some of these models, they can examine any part of about 6 inches, say about 15 centimeter of the semiconductor wafer. And some types of scanning electron microscopes can even tilt the objects. It can tilt the object by an angle of about 45 degrees also. Such facilities are also available. For conventional imaging of scanning electron microscope, specimens must be electrically conductive. So this is a requirement, and many of the biological specimens may not be electrically conductive. So you will have to make the specimen electrically conductive, then only you can use it for the analysis under scanning electron microscope. At least surface of the specimen should be made electrically conductive. We also ground this, just like grounding is done for our electric equipments at home. In the same manner, we have to electrically ground the instrument to prevent the accumulation of electrostatic charges on the surface. Now let us see these steps one by one. First, cleaning the surface of the specimen. Of course, this may not be applicable for many of our finished products in the Rasa Shastra. Whenever we talk about a biological specimen, or when we talk about any rock sample or an ore for that matter, its surface has to be properly cleaned first. So this is important because the surface can contain a variety of unwanted deposits. There may be dust, there may be silt, there may be detritus, there may be media components also, because if you are extracting the material, media components may be there, or other contaminants. That depends upon the source of the biological material and the experiment that may have been conducted prior to this SEM specimen preparation. So wherever required, clean the surface of the sample properly. Second is stabilizing the specimen. Stabilizing the specimen is essential, and it is done by using some fixatives. This fixation can be achieved, for example, by perfusion method, or by micro-injection, or by immersions, or with vapors using various fixatives. And such fixatives may include aldehydes, osmium tetroxide, tannic acid, or thiocarbohydrazide, etc. The third phase of preparation is rinsing the specimen. Once you do the fixation, the sample may have to be rinsed well, because there is always a possibility that excess of fixative may be there on the surface or at the side. So that has to be removed by rinsing the specimen. Fourth step is dehydration, dehydrating the specimen. The dehydration process of a biological sample has to be done very, very carefully. This has to be done in a phased manner, gradually. It is typically performed with either a graded series of acetone or ethanol. So either acetone or ethanol is taken, and in a graded fashion, this dehydration process is carried out. And next step here is drying the specimen. The scanning electron microscope operates with a vacuum inside, which I have already described. It's the same in the case of TEM also, transmission electron microscope also. Air inside the column will be sucked out, and the entire equipment operates with a vacuum. So this is the reason that specimens, if at all not dry, they may be destroyed in the electron microscope chamber. They may shrink this specimen. They may destroy or degenerate the specimen. That is why specimen must always be dried when they are mounted inside the scanning electron microscope chamber. Many electron microscopists consider a procedure known as critical point drying, CPD, as the gold standard for SEM specimen drying. Probably in 1957, a commercial company introduced this method of critical point drying. Here, water that is present in the sample is replaced by other fluid. We have to select a fluid very carefully, which has got a critical point of drying. Under special pressure situation, it replaces water content in the specimen. Usually we use liquid carbon dioxide for this purpose, because at a temperature which is slightly above the environmental temperature, say at about 35 degrees centigrade, this liquid carbon dioxide gets converted into carbon oxide and gets liberated. So that is the advantage of using liquid carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is removed after its transition from the liquid to the gas phase at the critical point, and the specimen is dried without any structural damage. So no shrinking occurs, no deterioration occurs at the surface, even the density also remains the same. That is the main intention of following this critical point drying method for drying the specimen. After these procedures of cleaning, fixation, rinsing, dehydration and drying, according to the appropriate protocol, specimens are to be mounted on a holder that can be inserted into the scanning electron microscope. The samples are typically mounted on a metallic holder, which is called as a stub. Usually aluminium stub is used. Whenever we use mercurial preparations like Rasakarpura, etc., you have to specifically inform the scientists regarding the possible interaction between mercury and also the aluminium, because it is our experience that in one of the thesis works, as the scientists had no idea about this interaction, the entire stub got destroyed. So you may have to coat your specimen in such a way that it doesn't react or interact with the aluminum stub, or stub made of some other metals may have to be used in such situations. So this is something that you have to keep in your mind. So samples are typically mounted on stubs, for which you can use a double sticky tape, because it is important for us to see that the sample which is mounted doesn't move. Investigator first should decide what is the best orientation of the specimen on mounting stub before attaching itself, because once it is attached, if you try to reorient, that may damage the sample. It is very, very difficult. So fix the orientation of the specimen, decide it properly, and accordingly you stick it on the stub. Now the last process is coating the specimen. I mentioned you in the beginning itself that at least the surface of the specimen should be electrically conductive. Otherwise, you cannot analyze it under scanning electron microscope. So here the idea of coating the specimen is to increase its conductivity in the scanning electron microscope and to prevent the buildup of high voltage charges on the specimen by conducting the charge to ground. So typically these specimens are coated with a thin layer, usually about 20 to 30 nanometer of a conductive material. Most commonly gold nanoparticles are used, or gold palladium or platinum also can be used for coating the specimen. Here you can see there is a biological sample here, there is a mosquito, and these samples have to be very carefully prepared to withstand the vacuum inside the microscope, and these are to be dried in a special manner, as I have already explained, to prevent them from shriveling. And this is a chamber where coating is done. If at all you have to make a biological specimen like mosquito or any tissue conductive, you have to apply a coat. So SEM samples are coated with a very thin layer of gold by a machine called sputter coater. And this coating method is also called as sputtering. So this is a prepared specimen now. The specimen is fixed here and it is mounted here on the stub. Now we are placing it in the chamber. The sample here is placed inside the microscope's vacuum column through an airtight door. So this is a comparison of optical microscope, transmission electron microscope and scanning electron microscope. In optical microscope, which we use regularly, you can see that there is a light source. Above that there is a condenser. Above that you have a platform where specimen is mounted. Above that is an objective. And here is an eyepiece and image is viewed directly through the eyepiece. Whereas in transmission electron microscope, we have a source of electrons, same as in the case of scanning electron microscope. And here we have magnetic lenses which help to focus. And here the electron beam, which is narrowed down, passes through an ultra thin film, ultra thin layer of the specimen and gets transmitted. And this image will be captured in a fluorescent screen with the help of a projector. In the case of SEM, as we have already discussed, from electron gun, electrons are thrown out, which are condensed by the magnetic lenses. They are further focused and they are made to scan in raster scan fashion by the deflectors. And from here, whatever the signals are generated, like secondary electrons, etc., are detected. They are transduced, they are amplified, and they are represented in cathode ray tube. In optical microscope, you will get only two-dimensional image. In scanning electron microscope, you will get three-dimensional image. When we compare, we can see that in optical microscope, magnification may be 4x to 1400x or maximum 2000x. In SEM, it may be 10x to 500,000 or 5 lakh x, sometimes even up to 2 million x. I was comparing the optical microscope, scanning electron microscope, and also the transmission electron microscope. So when I talk about the depth here, depth of the field to which the beam can penetrate in scanning electron microscope is quite good. That's about 30 millimeter. Whereas in optical microscope, you can see only up to 0.5 millimeter deep. When we compare the resolution, optical microscope may have a resolution up to 0.2 millimeter, whereas scanning electron microscope will give us best resolution up to 1.5 nanometer. SEM has a large depth of field which allows a large amount of the sample to be in focus at one time and produces an image that is a good presentation of the three-dimensional sample. The combination of higher magnification, larger depth of field, greater resolution, compositional and crystallographic information makes the scanning electron microscope one of the most heavily used instruments in academic, national lab research areas and also industry. What are the characteristic information that we can get in scanning electron microscope? Scanning electron microscope gives us an idea about the topography. That is, the surface features of an object, how it looks, its texture, direct relation between these features and the material properties. That also can be predicted. The second information that we can get is regarding morphology, the shape and size of the particles making up the object. Then we can try to understand the direct relation between these structures and material properties. The third thing that we can understand is the composition. The elements and compounds that the object is composed of and the relative amounts of them. Of course, when it is in combination with EDAX, you will get this information very well. So direct relationship between the composition and the material properties can be understood. The fourth information that we can get is crystallographic information, how the atoms are arranged in the object. So direct relation between these arrangements and material properties can be understood. It also gives us an information about the fracture mode, cracks that are occurring at the surface, pores that are formed at the surface. All these things can be identified. When Samanya Shodhana of metals were done, this information of grain boundary breakage, formation of cracks on the surface, all this could be understood by employing this scanning electron microscopy method. Here you can see SEM micrographs of fractured surface of two BaTiO3 samples. How fine can you see? A general question. Can you see a single sugar cube? Of course you can. The thickness of a sewing needle? Fine. The thickness of a piece of paper? Good. The resolution of a human eyes is of the order of 0.1 millimeter or 100 microns. However, something vital to human beings are of sizes smaller than 0.1 mm, like our cells, bacteria, microstructural details of the materials, etc. Microstructural features that concern us are the grain size, which are submicron, grain shapes, precipitate sizes, again submicron, volume fractions and distributions of various phases, defects like cracks and voids, which are again submicron. You can see in this insect 35x, 200x, 1000x, 5000x, 35,000x magnification, giving you very detailed three-dimensional images at much higher magnifications than is possible with a light microscope. If you talk about the applications of SEM further, it has many applications across different industry factors or different industry sectors. Extremely high magnification images together with localized chemical information means the instrument is capable of solving a great deal of common industrial issues, like say particle analysis, defect identification, materials and metallurgical problems. That is why it is applied in the industry of electronics, semiconductor, of course pharmaceutical industry, petrochemicals, plastic and polymers and many others. Range of materials like metals, glass and ceramics, semiconductors, plastics, powders and dusts, fibers like textile, glass, asbestos, natural fibers also can be analyzed here. It's useful for the classification of materials. It can analyze the failure and defect. It can examine the surface morphology including stereo imaging. It can analyze and identify the surface and airborne contamination. Its range of applications include powder morphology, particle size and analysis, cleaning problems and chemical etching, in welding and joining technology, in paints and coating failures, in identification and elimination of corrosion and oxidization problems. Now let us quote a few Ayurveda examples. This is an Abhrakabhasma sample of one of our PG students, Dr. Arya Verma. This is just a magnification of 750x, where she could identify micron level particles. You can see the particles of 5.6 microns, 7.93 microns here. This is a Loha Bhasma sample by Dr. Sajna at a magnification of just 850x. We could characterize microparticles here, 2.83 microns, 4.71 microns, etc. So this is a Rasakarpura sample, just 100x magnification. You can see beautiful crystal structure of the Rasakarpura, mercuric chloride, along with organic materials here and there. The same Rasakarpura, when was magnified by 4000x, we could identify nanoparticles of a range of, say, about 1420 nanometers. And this is 10,000x magnification of Raudra Rasa sample prepared by Dr. Gautaman by Kapotaputta method. Here we could identify nanoparticles of 528 nanometers, 573 nanometers, etc. Here, SEM of standard calcite is compared with scanning electron microscope image of Mukta Bhasma of the first, second and third puta. This is a very beautiful image of Varatika Bhasma at a good magnification of 50,000x. For most of our purposes in Rasa Shastra, for the characterization of nanoparticles, 50,000x magnification is enough. Here you can see the nanoparticles of a range of 58.1 nanometer, 101.2 nanometer, 43.1 nanometer, 63.0 nanometer, and here 88.1 nanometer. This is SEM image of Swarna Bhasma. We have Rajata Bhasma sample by Dr. K.R. Hebbar at a magnification of 7,000x. So this is a study carried out at Banaras Hindu University by Dr. Virupaksha and others on the characterization of Tarakeshwara Rasam, where they used the scanning electron microscope as one of the parameters. Article was published in 2012 in AYU. SCM was performed in the Department of Physics, Faculty of Science, BHU, Varanasi. SCM 840A, JEOL, Japan Electronics Optical Limited Manufacture scanning electron microscope was used. I think the same is used in many parts of our country. Micrographs were taken. The maximum limit of magnification of this instrument was found to be 3 lakh x. In this study, a small pellet of the sample, Tarakeshwara Rasa, was kept in a desiccator for drying. After complete desiccation, the sample was subjected for carbon coating, and then it was placed over the specimen holder, and it was observed under the microscope at 500, 1000 and 1500 x. Here preparatory method used was very simple, and it is not a biological material also. It is mostly a herbomineral or herbometallic formulation, where inorganic contents are quite high in number or in quantity. Micrographs were taken with the inbuilt camera. So this is the photomicrograph which shows the scanning electron microscopy image of Tarakeshwara Rasa up to 5 micron magnification. So that's all about the Ayurvedic application. There are many number of such examples that can be seen. You can go through a number of such publications where scanning electron microscopy was effectively used to capture the image of the surface of the sample. You will also find the studies where scanning electron microscopy was used in association with IRAX, which is a non-destructive technique. Elemental composition at the area of focus can be identified here. Even organic compounds can be understood because carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, like elements which will be destroyed by other methods where very high temperature is used like AAS or ACP can be effectively analyzed in IDAX, which is coupled with scanning electron microscope. So I am sure that you are convinced with the relevance and importance of application of scanning electron microscopy in the analysis, quality control, quality assurance and standardization of Ayurvedic products, especially Rasam Shaktis. With this, let me conclude today's session. See you in the next session soon. Once again, I extend my heartfelt gratitude for all those who are involved in Ayurveda Network, a very innovative educational program planned by Banaras Hindu University. Thank you. See you soon.